Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining the session. I will start with housekeeping first. So the session will be translated to Turkish and English. I would like to ask the audience, please select the language you prefer using the globe icon at the bottom left corner of your screen. To avoid the overlap of the sound, please mute the speaker if he or she speaks in a language different of translation. For example, if the speaker delivers the presentation in Turkish and you need to hear it in English, you should select the English language button at the bottom of your screen and then mute the speaker. I will repeat this in Turkish. So, değerli katılımcılar, hoş geldiniz etkinliğimize. Başlamadan önce oturumda Türkçe ve İngilizce simultane tercüme yapılacağını belirtmek istiyorum. Ekranınızın sol alt köşesinde bir dünya ikonu göreceksiniz. Bu ikona tıklayarak dinlemek istediğiniz dil seçeneğini işaretleyebilirsiniz. Eğer tercümeyi dinleyecekseniz seslerin çakışmaması için konuşmacıyı sessiz almanızı rica ediyorum. Okay. From this point on, I will continue in English. Dear participants, welcome to the second day of the UK FinTech Week for the Eastern Europe and Central Asia, organized by the UK Department for International Trade. Yesterday, we had an inspirational session on data-driven banking, and today we will focus on regulatory technologies in AML and CFT compliance. I'm Zeynep Karamanlı, Trade Manager covering digital technologies. I'm based in Istanbul at the British Consulate General. Our session will start with the keynote address by the head of the Financial Crimes Investigation Board of Turkey, BASEAK, Dr. Hayrettin Kurt. Dr. Kurt, thank you for joining the event. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much for all. Değerli katılımcılar, Sayın Büyükelçilik mensupları, finans sektörümüzün değerli temsilcileri, beyefendiler, öncelikle hepinizi selamlayarak konuşmama başlıyorum. Konuşmam kapsamında öncelikle Mali Suçları Araştırma Kurulu Başkanlığımız, kısa adıyla MASAK, hakkında özet bilgiler vermek istiyorum. MASAK 1996 yılında 4208 sayılı kanun ile kurulan Türkiye'nin mali istihbarat birimidir. Doğrudan Hazine ve Maliye Bakanı'na bağlı bir yapıdır. Bu yapı kurumun yüksek düzeyde bir operasyonel otonomiye sahip olmasına vesile olmaktadır. Kurumun yetkilerini mütakiben 2006 yılında yayımlanan 5549 sayılı suç gelirlerinin aklanmasının önlenmesi hakkında kanun, 2013 tarihli terörizmin finansmanının önlenmesi hakkında kanun ve 2018 yılında yayımlanan bir sayılı Cumhurbaşkanlığı kararnamesi ile yeniden belirlenmiştir. Bu çerçevede MASAK Başkanlığı, Mali İstihbarat Bilimi olmasının ötesinde de bazı fonksiyonları haizdir. İzninizle kurumun yetkileri kapsamında da kısa bilgiler vermek istiyorum. MASAK, Mali İstihbarat Birimi olma fonksiyonu çerçevesinde yükümlü grubu olarak nitelendirdiğimiz finansal kuruluşlardan ve finansal olmayan belirli iş ve meslek gruplarından şüpheli işlem bildirimleri ve diğer bildirimleri alan, bunları erişim sağladığı veri tabanları ve diğer bilgiler çerçevesinde analiz eden ve sonuçlarını adli birimlere, kolluk birimlerine ve diğer ilgili düzenleyici ve denetleyici kuruluşlara aktaran bir kurumdur. MASAK'ta yapılan analizlerin kaynağı bazı durumlarda doğrudan Cumhuriyet Savcılıkları ya da mahkemelerden gelen adli talepler de olabilmektedir. Yine kolluk birimleriyle görev alanları çerçevesinde aklama ve terörizmin finansmanı suçlarına ilişkin bulgulara erişen diğer idari birimlerimiz de başkanlığımıza konuyu aktardığında bu bilgiler MASAK'ta yapılan bir analize kaynak teşkil edebilmektedir. MASAK ayrıca aklama suçuna yönelik ilave analiz ihtiyacı ortaya çıkan durumlarda inceleme, examination faaliyetini yürütmekte, Ceza Muhakemesi Kanunu madde 128 çerçevesinde adli birimlerden alınan taleplere istinaden suçtan elde edilen değerlere ilişkin rapor hazırlamakta. 5549 sayılı kanun madde 19A kapsamında erteleme talepli şüpheli işlem bildirimlerini ivedilikle analiz ederek Sayın Hazine ve Maliye Bakanı kararı ile bu işlemlerin ertelenmesini temin etmektedir. MASAK bunun yanında diğer paydaş kurumlarımızla koordineli bir şekilde olmak üzere görev alanı dahilindeki uluslararası ilişkileri de yürütmektedir. Muadil mali istihbarat birimleri ile MASAK mutabakat muhtıraları Memorandum of Understanding imzalamaktadır. Bugüne kadar 56 ülke muadil birimi ile bu yönde işbirliği protokolü mahiyetinde MOU imzalanmıştır. Bunun yanında Egmont güvenli ağı üzerinden diğer mali istihbarat birimleriyle faaliyet alanımız kapsamında bilgi değişimi icra edilebilmektedir. Ayrıca muadil ülke birimleriyle dönemsel olarak çalışma ziyaretleri programlanmaktadır. Başta FATF olmak üzere başkanlığımız görev alanı dahilinde çalışma ve standartlar yayımlayan uluslararası kuruluşların çalışmalarını da takip etmektedir. Bunun yanında MASAK denetim elemanları marifetiyle yükümlülüklere uyum denetimi ve ihlal incelemeleri de yapmaktadır. 2020 yılından itibaren FATF'in standartları gereğince yükümlü denetimlerimiz risk temelli denetim metodolojisi çerçevesinde yapılmaya başlanmıştır. Bu bağlamda ilgili düzenleyici ve denetleyici kurumlarımızdan da aldığımız katkılar çerçevesinde sektörel değerlendirmeler yapılmaktadır. Yine denetim elemanlarımızı ve yükümlülerimizi bilgilendirmek amacıyla başkanlık tarafından denetim rehberleri ve sektörel bazda yükümlülüklere uyum rehberleri yayımlanmaktadır. MASAK ayrıca Birleşmiş Milletler Güvenlik Konseyi kararlarının uygulanmasına ilişkin olarak isimleri terör listelerinde yer alan kişilerin mal varlığının dondurulmasında, dondurulan mal varlığının yönetiminde ve Birleşmiş Milletler Güvenlik Konseyi kararına uyumun denetiminde de görev icra etmektedir. Tabii ki eşyanın tabiatı gereği tüm bu görevlerin icrası teknolojiden en üst düzeyde faydalanmayı gerektirmektedir. Peki temel olarak bu yönde neler yaptık? Bizler ve neler yapmaktayız? Bu bakımdan da bilgi vereceğim. Başkanlık olarak bu düşünceyle 2012 yılından itibaren yükümlü gruplarından MASAK online sistemini kullanarak elektronik ortamda ve güvenli bir ağ üzerinden şüpheli işlem bildirimleri almaktayız. Bugün itibariyle finans sektörünün neredeyse tamamından, finansal olmayan kesimdense kargo şirketlerinden, kuyumculardan ve emlakçılardan elektronik ortamda şüpheli işlem bildirimi almak için gerekli altyapı çalışmalarını tamamlamış bulunmaktayız. Bu sayede yükümlülerden yılda sayısı 400 bine yaklaşan şüpheli işlem bildirimi sorunsuz bir şekilde alınabilmektedir. Yine skorlama kriterlerimiz çerçevesinde bu bildirimler çok hızlı bir şekilde ön analize tabi tutulmakta, yüksek puan alan bildirimler ise analize konu edilmektedir. Bir diğer önemli düzenleme alanımızsa yükümlü gruplarına 2015 yılından itibaren elektronik tebligatla taleplerimizin iletilmesidir. 5549 ve 6415 sayılı kanunlar kapsamında başkanlığımıza verilen görevlerin icrası aşamasında talep ve bildirimlerin anlık iletilme zorunluluğunun yanı sıra iletimin kolay, hızlı ve güvenli bir şekilde gerçekleştirilmesi gerekmektedir. 5549 sayılı kanuna eklenen 9A maddesi kapsamında kendilerine elektronik ortamda tebligat yapılacak kurum ve kuruluşlar ile başkanlığımız arasında elektronik imzalı olarak resmi yazışma kabiliyetimizde bulunmaktadır. Teknoloji kullanımını teşvik ettiğimiz bir başka alansa uzaktan kimlik tespitine imkan veren düzenlemelerimizdir. Tedbirler yönetmeliğimize 2021 yılında eklediğimiz 6A maddesi ile yükümlünün asli faaliyet alanı ile ilgili mevzuatta yüz yüze olmayan bir işlem ile sözleşme kurulmasına cevaz verilmesi halinde gerçek kişilerle sürekli iş ilişkisi tesisinde müşteri kimliğinin doğrulanması amacıyla uzaktan kimlik tespiti yöntemlerinin kullanılabilmesine imkan tanınmıştır. Örneğin Bankaların müşterileriyle sürekli iş ilişkisi tesisinde uzaktan kimlik tespiti 1 Nisan 2021 tarihli ve 31441 sayılı resmi gazetede yayınlanan bankalarca kullanılacak uzaktan kimlik tespiti yöntemlerine ve elektronik ortamda sözleşme ilişkisinin kurulmasına ilişkin yönetmelik çerçevesinde gerçekleştirmektedir. Başkanlığımız da tedbirler yönetmeliği ve yine 2021 yılında çıkarılan 19 sayılı MASAK tebliği çerçevesinde konuya yaklaşmaktadır. Uzaktan kimlik tespitiyle sürekli iş ilişkisi tesisi bir elektronik kanal üzerinden bilişim veya elektronik haberleşme cihazları gibi uzaktan iletişim araçları kullanılarak gerçekleştirilmektedir. Bu düzenleme ülkemizin de üyesi olduğu FATF'in 2020 yılında yayımladığı dijital kimlik konulu rehberleriyle ve 10 nolu müşterinin tanınması konulu tavsiyesiyle de tutarlıdır. Bir diğer öne çıkan düzenleme alanı da kripto varlık hizmet sağlayıcılarının düzenlenmesi konusudur. Ülkemizde tedbirler yönetmeliğinde bu sene Mayıs ayında yapılan düzenlemelerle kripto varlık hizmet sağlayıcıları yükümlüler arasına alınmıştır. Yine başkanlığımızın öncülüğünde kripto varlık hizmet sağlayıcıları için aklama suçuna ilişkin analiz ve inceleme faaliyetleri de yürütülmektedir. Bunun dışında başkanlığımız gelişmiş istatistiki araçları kullanarak analiz faaliyetlerini yürütmeye gayret etmektedir. Başkanlığımız için yazılmış olan entegre mali istihbarat sistemi çerçevesinde başkanlıkta görev yapan uzmanlarımız çeşitli protokoller dahilinde erişim sağladığımız gelir getirici faaliyete, işlem bilgilerine, servet unsurlarına ve suç kayıtlarına ilişkin bilgilere hızlı bir şekilde erişim sağlayabilmektedir. Bunun yanında Analyst Notebook, Business Objects, OneBridge, One2, Radar, SPSS ve benzeri programlar kullanmak suretiyle büyük dosyalara ilişkin çalışma yapabilmektedir. Tüm bu çalışmalar neticesinde geçtiğimiz yıl ülke tarihinin en büyük uyuşturucu kaçakçılığı ve akaryakıt kaçakçılığı temelli vergi kaçakçılığı dosyaları, sırasıyla bataklık ve silici dosyaları aydınlatılmıştır. Bu bağlamda büyük veri analiziyle uğraşan stratejik analiz dairemizin de övgüye değer çalışmalar yaptığını da ifade etmem gerekir. Değerli konuklar, son olarak ülkemizin FATF nezdinde 4. tur karşılıklı değerlendirme sürecine ilişkin bilgi vermek isterim. Malumunuz olduğu üzere ülkemiz FATF nezdinde 2019 yılında bir değerlendirmeden geçmiş ve değerlendirme neticesinde hazırlanan raporda Ekim 2019'da bu kuruluşun genel kurulunda kabul edilmiştir. Rapor sonuçları çerçevesinde ülkemiz FATF'in takip sürecine ve izleme dönemine alınmıştır. Bu FATF'in olağan bir prosedürüdür. Çok kısa bilgi vermek gerekirse takip süreci FATF'in teknik uyum, izleme dönemi ise etkinlik kriterleriyle bağlantılıdır. Teknik uyum yani mevzuat anlamında atılan en önemli adım FATF standartlarına uyum amacıyla kabul edilen ve 31 Aralık 2020 tarihinde yürürlüğe giren 72-62 sayılı kitle imha silahlarının yayılmasının finansmanının önlenmesine ilişkin kanundur. Böylelikle terörizmin finansmanı ve kitle imha silahları alanında hedeflenen finansal yaptırımlar, dernekler ve yardım toplama mevzuatı, merkezi kayıt kuruluşu nezdinde hamiline yazılı senetlerin izlenmesi, yükümlü gruplarının kapsamının FATF standartlarına uyumlu hale getirilmesi, özellikle avukatlar yükümlüler arasına alınmıştır. Finansal grup kapsamında iç kontrol ve uyum programı uygulanması, kara para ve terörizmin finansmanı suçlarında uygun soruşturma tekniklerinin kullanılması, yaptırımların etkinliğinin artırılması konularında ülkemiz önemli gelişmeler kaydetmiştir. Bu düzenlemelerin ekseninde ve bunlara ilave olarak uygulama etkinliğini geliştirecek çok da önemli adımlar atılmıştır. Özellikle etkinlik bağlamında ülkemiz, Birleşmiş Milletler Güvenlik Konseyi mal varlığı dondurma kararlarını 24 saatten kısa bir sürede uygulamaya koyan bir iç dondurma mekanizması tesis etmiştir. Yükümlü gruplarına risk bazlı denetim uygulamış, yükümlülüklere uyum rehberleri hazırlamıştır. Tüzel kişiler için risk analizi çalışmalarını tamamlamıştır. Gerçek faydalanıcı sicilini kurmuştur. MASAK'ı yeniden yapılandırmıştır. Kurumlar arası işbirliğinin geliştirilmesine yönelik protokoller imzalamıştır. Kara para aklama ve terörizmin finansmanı suçları için ihtisas mahkemeleri kurmuştur. Adalet Bakanlığı bünyesinde kara para ve terörizmin finansmanı soruşturmaları için bir genelge ile kolluk birimleri nezdinde mali soruşturma rehberleri hazırlamıştır. UYAP'taki adli istatistik modülünü daha etkin hale getirmiştir. Ve suç gelirlerinin aklanması ve terörizmin finansmanında etkinliğin artırılmasına ilişkin ulusal strateji belgesini de yürürlüğe koymuştur. Yapılan çalışmalar neticesinde etkililik bağlamında FATF'in eleştiri konusu yaptığı tüm alanlarda gelişme kaydedilmiş ve bu durum FATF tarafından da açıkça kabul edilmiştir. Pandemi sürecindeki tam kapanma tedbirlerine rağmen atılan bu adımlar, FATF değerlendirme sürecinde ilgili kurumlarımız tarafından bütün açıklığıyla ortaya konulmasına rağmen maalesef FATF tarafından bu durum yeterli görülmemiş. Biraz da FATF prosedürlerinin katılığı nedeniyle ülkemiz hak etmediği halde bir listeleme konusuyla muhatap olmuştur. Bundan sonraki süreçte Türkiye'de suç gelirlerinin aklanması ve terörizmin finansmanıyla mücadelede ve müsaade uygulamalarında etkinliğin artırılması strateji belgesinin etkili bir şekilde uygulanması temin edilecek, kara para aklama ve terörizmin finansmanıyla mücadele eden kurum ve kuruluşlarımızın daha da güçlendirilmesi ve bu alanda işbirliği ve koordinasyonun daha da artırılması sağlanacaktır. Bu bağlamda FATF ve ilgili kurumlarla işbirliği içerisinde gerekli tüm adımlar atılmaya devam edilecek ve ülkemizin hak etmediği bu listeden en kısa sürede çıkması sağlanacaktır. Bundan hiç kimsenin şüphesi olmamalıdır. Elbette bu süreçte de aklama ve terörizmin finansmanıyla mücadele sistematiğinin bir parçası olan, başta bankalarımız olmak üzere, yükümlü gruplarımızdan da gerekli işbirliğini beklediğimizi ifade etmek istiyorum. Değerli katılımcılar, bu platformda bana konuşma imkanı verdiğiniz için çok teşekkür ediyorum. Hepinize hayırlı günler diliyorum. Selamlarımı sunuyorum.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kurt, for your address and insight on BASEAK and its activities. It's been a pleasure to host you at this event. Thank you again. Now we will continue with an introductory presentation on regulatory technologies by Holly Scott Mason. Holly is the liaison prosecutor working at the British in Ankara. Over to you, Holly. I will start the presentation now.
Thank you so much, Zainab. Yes, so I am the liaison prosecutor here at the embassy, but I am also, I moonlight as a FATF assessor. And in addition to conducting the MER reports, which Dr. Kurt was just discussing with you, the FATF do actually also do a lot of research and issue very helpful best practice papers. One of the big pieces of research the FATF have done this year has been on the opportunities and challenges posed by the using of technology to comply with financial regulation. So let's just unpack these ideas a little bit more to start off with. Firstly, next slide, please, Zainab. Why is it a problem if we don't have the private sector helping the public sector and working together to best comply with AML CFT compliance? Well, firstly, if you have poor risk assessment, this can mean that you end up, particularly as financial institutions, instead of having a risk-based approach, having a rules-based approach, which is very much focused on box ticking, is very inefficient, takes a lot of resource, and also doesn't reflect the real money laundering and terrorist financing risks that we're concerned about. It can also exclude people from financial inclusion in being able to actually get on board and get onboarded with different banks. So why is analysing the amount of data that you guys are dealing with difficult? Next slide, please, Zainab. I've called these the 3 V's. So firstly, you've got a very large amount of unstructured data. Secondly, you have data coming in at enormously high speeds. And thirdly, variety. You've got data from different databases, different formats and different structures coming in all at the same time. And so relying on simple algorithms or human input just isn't fast enough in the modern age to deal with that. Next slide, please. So what are the advantages of using Regtech for the private sector? Why do you guys care? I think there's three central reasons, as far as I can tell, and that is, firstly, there's an increase in efficiency, and you take out the human element in these very repetitive processes. You optimize your resource deployment, because obviously resources are money, and the more efficiently you can use those, the less of your resources you will use up. And finally, you get a more reliable product, which is easier to communicate to others, and because it's in a standardized form. So next slide. So firstly, to ask the question, what is Regtech? And I've grouped these, although I've got lots and lots of Regtech experts who are going to be on the line in a minute. I am not an IT expert, but just for me, they are grouped broadly into artificial intelligence, and that includes machine learning and using algorithms that change to reflect the difference in risk profiles or the information you want to learn. Application programming interfaces, which, as far as I can tell, are essentially ways of making software which collects different data be able to work together. And finally, digital identification solutions for the purpose of client due diligence and customer due diligence. So on the next slide, I haven't got time to go through all of this. I'm very aware that I've only got 5 minutes in today's presentation. But these are some of the areas where, in particular, machine learning can add value and make your lives as the private sector easier to comply with the regulatory framework which has been imposed by BASEAK, and so that you can give them ultimately the best product from the data which you have. I think there's Dr. Kurt has already addressed the question of using biometrics and identification software and analysis. But I think one of the things that I would just pull out of this slide is how you can also use Regtech to actually identify and implement regulatory updates. Moving on to how can API add value, and again I am going to whiz through these because I'm very aware of how little time I have. Essentially, the API systems can enhance the interoperability between your banking data and de-silo your system so that you're really using all the data that you have as effectively as possible. So very quickly, who is using Regtech? So in the FATF's analysis that it did over this year, it came out with these stats on the different organisations and institutions that are using Regtech. So obviously you can see from that graph that a vast majority of the institutions using Regtech are multinational financial institutions or other retail and commercial banks. But in its analysis, there was noted that there was quite a big difference between the larger banks and the smaller local banks being able to fully utilise Regtech to its optimum capacity. And finally, before I pass on to my industry experts, what does the industry say to the FATF about why Regtech is useful? And I think it's just helpful to think about the many different ways that Regtech can assist you in complying as effectively as possible with the regulatory framework. So you've got better identification and management of your money laundering and terrorist financing risks. There is a better ability to process and analyse data. There is more efficient and faster onboarding practices in financial institutions. There's greater auditability and good governance within banks because of the reliability of the data. There's a reduction in costs and a maximisation of human resources. And overall, the actual product, the suspicious activity reports, which you then provide to BASEAK, are of a higher quality excuse me, and enable them to use that data more effectively. Just as my last slide, there is a interesting graph there of how the respondents to the FATF survey felt about the use of new technologies and how it had benefited them and their businesses. Just finally, if you'd like to read more on this particular FATF analysis, that is the link to the paper. It contains a lot of interesting and different examples from around the world, from Brazil to Tunisia to India to all over the world, on different innovative solutions which have been taken by financial institutions to comply with the regulatory framework more effectively. And it is, it might put you to bed, it might put you to sleep at night, but so read it in the morning. But it is a very interesting and helpful read. Thank you very much, Zainab. Thank you for having me to speak here, and I look forward to listening to our panel.
Thank you very much, Holly, for this informative presentation in a very short time. Now we will have a discussion with a great panel chaired by Richard Maton from International Regtech Association. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the slot, so please type your questions using the Q&A questions feature at the top of your screen. Richard, I will just go over to you, but I also need to, sorry about this. I will also need to, İlker Bey is one of our first panelists. İlker Bey, okay, İlker Bey, if you please just click on Start Webcasting button at the top of your screen. İlker Bey? Apologies for this interruption. I just sent you the invitation again. İlker Bey. Apologies for this.
Bir saniye gözüküyorsunuz. Merhabalar, merhabalar. Hi, everyone.
Thank you, İlker Bey. Apologies to the audience for this interruption. Over to you, Richard, for the panel.
Thank you very much, Zainab, and thank you very much, Holly, for that excellent scene setting for our series of panels that we're going to host today. Now, just to give you some context, we're going to start with Ilker and a look at the regulatory framework and the priorities and how regulated entities need to think about that in the context of developing a risk-based approach. And then we'll dive into specifically how some of those new data sets, data flows, those new technologies and new models that Holly went through in her presentation on the FATF best practice are actually being applied by regulated entities. And then lastly, we'll have a discussion with some of the people and organizations that are actually helping regulated entities through that journey of transformation. And within that, we'll actually specifically call out some of the practice and best practice we see with fintechs, who are of course digitally native, and so come from a very different starting point than some of the legacy incumbents. And then we will open this to questions. What I would actually suggest that as we go through panels, because these will be very interactive, if you do have questions, just fire away and we'll do our best to answer those as we go along. But at the end, we'll have a session where we'll bring all of our panelists together and we'll look at some of these issues, some of the challenges and opportunities moving forward from the different perspectives of those implementing and those helping regulated entities to transform. So we'll start off with Ilker, and perhaps you could just give us a brief introduction to yourself and take us through your presentation, please.
Thank you, Richard. It's a great honor and privilege for me to be a panelist in such a wonderful panel. And I would like to thank Consulate for their kind invitation. Also, I would like to thank the previous presenters, including Mr. President, for their great presentations. I'm a senior associate in BASEAK. BASEAK is one of top tier law partnership in Turkey. We advise on wide variety of legal areas such as business law, regulation law, compliance law, and using a result-oriented approach with the involvement of a huge professionals team, more than 100 professionals consisting of attorneys, academicians, ex-governmental officials, and IT professionals. We had consulted local and foreign companies in their compliance process, and AML is one of our important study area, and we believe that the implication of AML regulations will drastically get importance, and we are getting ready for that future. Today, I will try to give you a brief summary of AML regulatory framework of Turkey. First of all, an important question pop up in our mind: what is laundering proceeds of crime? All kinds of income and wealth obtained from crimes, those require a prison sentence of at least 6 months and more than 6 months considered as proceeds of crime. These definitions came from Turkish penalty code, and accordingly, money laundering crime consists of 3 main elements. First of them is the predicate crime. And the second one, there should be an income which had been created from that predicate crime. And the legal income, the third one is the legal income should be tried to transform into from illegal to legal form by the conducts of the offender. All these essential elements consist or constitute the money laundering crime. However, there is an important distinction between money laundering crime and the infringement of anti-money laundering regulations, considering that money laundering crime is a crime. However, in general, as a matter of rule, the infringement of AML regulations constitutes misdemeanor. And according to the sanction of the crime, money laundering crime is imprisonment. But again, in general, there is 2 exceptions for this rule. But in general, the sanction of the infringement of AML regulations are administrative fines and administrative measures. And AML regulations are legal tools for combating with money laundering crime. And the relevant authority for money laundering crime is law enforcement forces such as police force. But when it comes to infringement of AML regulations, the main competent authority is BASEAK, as you know. And there are important milestones of AML regulations in Turkey. Maybe the first and the important one is the establishment of FATF in 1989. And after 2 years later, Turkey became a member of FATF. And the first AML codification had entered into force in 1996. And the one which is in force in now is codified in 2006. Also, CFT law had been entered into force in 2013, and there are some important secondary legislations of the said laws, such as measures regulations, compliance regulation, rules and principles of CFT law, and regulation on delaying process within the scope of prevention of CFT. And also BASEAK published some communiques in order to explain the application of the state regulations. Main ones are regarding to simplified measures, identification and confirmation, and notification of suspicious transaction reporting. And we also know that BASEAK published many guidelines to give detailed insights to implementers. The latest one of the guidelines is regarding to crypto asset service providers and saving financement companies, which are very crucial to me, which are very crucial for us to analyze the legal risk of clients in AML regulations. When we check the reasons of or when we try to figure out the main ideas or rationale behind these regulations, we can summarize it in 3 main headlines: to cut off the financial resources of the criminal organizations, to maintain sustainable growth, and to increase the social welfare. At the end of the day, the successful combat with AML and CFT will lead an increasement in the society's total welfare, and which also affect every individuals, even the ones in the street. And BASEAK is the financial intelligence unit of Turkey, which is AML watchdog, and which is also an administrative agency. There are 3 main authority of BASEAK. First of them is regulation. Second one is monitoring the sector markets, and the latest one is if BASEAK after its investigation, if it inspects the infringement of AML regulations, then BASEAK will imply the relevant sanctions. These 3 duties of BASEAK is the crucial ones, and the obliged parties of AML regulations. Actually, we observe that number of the obliged parties are increased day by day, and we may estimate that it will continue to increase. Therefore, compliance to AML regulations are an inevitable part of being an active participant of the financial and economic activities. There is or must at least no way out from the AML regulations. And the obliged parties are counted in the AML law: parties, insurance banks, insurance companies, private pension companies, capital market companies, and many other traders are within the context of the said regulations. The main obligations derived from these regulations are identification of customers, or the other ACA, or popular name KYC, suspicious transaction reports, establishment of education, internal audit, control and risk management system, due to the give information or notification of suspicious transaction to the MASAK, and providing documents and information when requested by the public agencies, record keeping and submission of them when requested by the public agencies for a period of 8 years, and establishment of a compliance unit and appointment of a compliance manager. And finally, I would like to address the sanctions of the infringement of AML regulations. As a matter of law of misdemeanor governs the sanction process. Unless a particular regulation set out in AML law, there are two exceptions to this. I mean, there are only two crimes defined in the AML law. These are disclosure of suspicious transaction reports to the unauthorized one, and infringement of record keeping obligations. I tried to summarize all AML regulations and regulatory framework of Turkey in a short time. I really appreciate for your patience. Thank you.
Oops. Hello. I don't know if you can hear me.
We can hear you, Richard.
Oh, okay, great. You can hear me, but I'm not sure you can see me. But anyway, so thank you so much, Ilker. That was fantastic overview. I think there are lots of questions, but I know we're going to come back to questions at the end, and I think it will be great to get your perspective about some broader issues around the regulatory framework and direction as well. But for the meantime, I think I'm going to bring in Tolunay, Kansay, so from HSBC, and Ozge, Gursoy from ING, for our discussion around how to implement the regulatory framework and a risk-based approach. And I must say, please forgive me for the pronunciations of your name. So please introduce yourself properly as we go through this discussion. So maybe Tolunay, I can start with you, and just explain who you are, what you do at HSBC, and then how you think about sort of design principles for using data flows and some of these tools and technologies more to help you become more effective and efficient with your AML CFT compliance.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Richard, and hi everyone. Welcome to the panel. It's a pleasure of mine to be here today and share my views. Let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Tolunay Kansay. I am the head of financial crime compliance at HSBC Turkey. I have over 25 years of banking experience, mostly in internal audit, risk and compliance. Let me start with saying a couple of words about the current operating environment. We all live and feel that we are in a rapidly changing world these days. Mostly or partially open to discussion because of the COVID-19 conditions. Maybe we are seeing an acceleration in the pace of change. We feel the impact of digitalization in all aspects of our lives. We work remotely. We buy or sell more than before online. Trainings or all sorts of organizations like this have moved to virtual environment, and it's not unusual to read and discuss about metaverse over the weekend, or just enjoy digital art during our spare times. So that's totally any world, and it's same for the financial institutions as well. We are talking about and we are seeing a rapid change in the industry. Digitalization is on the top of the agenda of the management, not just for financial crime, of course, but generally. Everything is becoming online. We are talking about fully digital banking. We are discussing the blockchain, and it is taking its place for the future of trade finance. And that's totally a different world, to be honest. I mean, and if you don't start investing on future, I mean, you already start losing something. You losing the competition in this environment. So therefore, we have to keep pace with the change and keep pace with the digitalization and the new technologies. If I just move to the financial crime world, yes, the fraudsters are also, or the illicit actors are also benefiting from the new technologies. They are leveraging it. We are seeing new cybercrime methodologies every day. There is a real-time payment, and they are successfully using these channels. They are able to hide their identity through the non-face-to-face channels. So they have new ways, they have sophisticated ways, and financial institutions, I think, have a harder mission right now to protect the banking industry and to protect the society and to fulfill their responsibilities towards the regulatory parties. So, I mean, under these conditions, as the bank, as the financial institutions, we have a couple of key items where we are working on, we are discussing, and we are trying to see the future of these aspects. One of them is a major development in the local market, as mentioned by head of BASEAK. Also, it is the digital client onboarding. So this year's important technology development that we are seeing in the market. This is important because taking this opportunity, local players once more review the questions they are asking to their clients. On one hand side, they try to optimize these questions to increase the customer satisfaction and increase the customer experience. On the other hand side, they wanted to ask the correct questions towards the customers in line with their risk appetite, because there is risk element attached to it, and KYC is the basis of the financial crime risk framework. We are benefiting from the technology in this area. There is EFC, as you know, a methodology where we are verifying the IDs, or aliveness controls, face recognition, which are all reducing the risks attached to this channel. So that's why I think that is a very important development where we all the banks I think are benefiting from the fintechs and the other companies as well. The other discussion point on our agenda is the transaction monitoring. We talk about the real-time payments. There are millions of transactions in a second, and there are new and sophisticated methodologies of the financial crime, right? So under these conditions, conventional methods for transaction monitoring start lagging behind. That's how we feel, and we feel that there needs to be new techniques, new methodologies to be implemented to have a better coverage, risk coverage. Our concerns is more around usage of our resources efficiently and effectively. We are believing that false positive ratios, unfortunately, is remaining high in the market. Therefore, we believe that we should use big data more than before, or we should use data analytics, data science more than before to identify the right set of questions or customers where we should spend our efforts. There are some good best practices developing in the world, like I mean a big data pools where a lot of a different variety of information are being collated, like customer transactions, customers profiles, live data like negative news information from internet, and through the new methodologies like robotics or AI, these are all producing together more appropriate results for the organizations to review and to action upon. So that's the future of it, to be honest, not the legacy systems where we are just threshold-based or a scenario-based transaction monitoring systems as we are using. I think the market will move to these new methodologies going forward to have a better risk coverage in this area.
Fantastic. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. My apologies.
Just a couple of last, maybe
yeah.
I'm I don't know if I'm exceeding my time,
No,
but one other concern is the topic is the integration of our systems. So I think in the future we will not talk about a single transaction screening system or a single CDD system, but a set of systems, toolkits, which are all integrated with each other to manage the financial crime risk. So that's one important area. And before concluding, I just want to touch on to two other things. One of them is the people upskilling. It's not only enough to invest on the technology. It is also important to invest on our employees, teams as well. We should create the digitalization mindset in our employees, upskill them to the new trends and new technologies. So that's key. And also the culture of the organizations is pretty important. You can spend a lot of money for the systems, but if you don't have the sufficient culture in an organization, tone from the top, we all know that we cannot manage the financial crime risk, but there is a great improvement in the local market on this area. So that's all for now.
fantastic. No, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Tolunay. That's a very comprehensive, setting out of the the opportunities and challenges as you see it from a major financial institution. And I guess Ozge, turning to you and your role, so both within ING, but also because as a founding member of the Compliance Association, I know that those issues are very much front of your mind. And I wonder whether I could just focus on a couple of areas. So Tolunay, talked about the importance of digital tools for onboarding, KYC, and also the importance of applying new machine learning to areas such as transactions monitoring. I know that's an area of focus for you, and I just wonder whether you can perhaps give a bit of context to you and what you do, and then a bit of depth around how you see the integration of machine learning with rule-based systems, particularly around transaction monitoring, improving outcomes as a starting point, please.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Very swift introduction. I'm Ozge. I'm the head of compliance for ING Turkey, and I have been in the compliance area for 15 years and 20 years in banking. So I think maybe talking a little bit about challenges when it comes to implementation. I think two main headlines are like the design and the people. Like I'll pick up where Tolunay left when it comes to people. But when we look at the design, I think it's also going to give shed a little light on the rule-based scenario versus machine learning. I think there are three main steps that we need to be careful when implementing any kind of technology in this AML area. The first one is everything starts with data. So data collection and data entry is actually where it all starts. So if you collect data that doesn't work, that doesn't make any sense, or it's not accurate, or it's not up to date, then the $1 million you spent for the processes and tools actually do not give you the outcome that you deserve. Therefore, it's very important to make sure that you gather the data you need with an accurate and effective way. And for example, the rule-based scenario versus machine learning, I think comes into the picture at this point, because rule-based scenarios are like formulas, like if-then formulas. If A, then B, and then they give you an outcome, and you look at the outliers, and try to figure out what is an outlier, what is normal, and what's not normal. But all you're based on is your static data plus the transactions. But when it's machine learning, you can make sense out of the behavior, or you can actually profile the client from its behavior rather than the static data. So you actually eliminate the risk of having an inaccurate or not up-to-date static data at hand. Therefore, I think that is why AML CFT world, when it comes to financial institutions and monitoring side, we are like very hungry for implementing such smart tools to help us with the monitoring. I think the second challenge is where the data analysts come into the picture and you have the compliance officers and they don't speak each other's language and you have to have a business translator in between. Then when it comes to translation, some things get lost as always. Therefore, it's very important to have these people, have these domains interact with each other and understand what they're doing in order to have a good outcome. And I think third is, again, one of the most important parts to it is the investment, because the resources are scarce and you need to prioritize what to invest and when to invest and how much to invest. Because we as financial institutions, we run the bank, we change the bank with a highly volatile regulatory environment. And as Tolunay said, the fraudsters and the criminals are always ahead of us. Therefore, at this environment, you need to really pick your investment place to spend the money on to give you the best result and in the most efficient way. And when it comes to people, when compliance domain was introduced in Turkey, I know Tolunay is also have audit background. I have audit background. So when you look at people who have 10 plus years of experience in compliance in Turkey, you either find audit or legal. And to a certain extent, there are like regulatory experts who were mandated to provide consultancy on whether a certain product or process is in line with a certain regulation. But now the needs are beyond that. So we really need new skill sets, new people, new way of working, new way of thinking in the compliance domain in order to actually, take it to the next level. So if I were like an engineer or data analyst, I would be very interested to step in because there's too much to do here.
Absolutely, and I think we'll come on to some of that points when we look at how fintechs who are digitally native, right, and start from a very different position in terms of their technology, but also perhaps mindset and skills, and maybe there's some lessons that can be learned there. We've had one question from the audience from Alexander, so thank you, Alexander, for this question, which is there any online tool helping institutions to validate proceeding as compliant or not to an AML policy? So I know, Tolunay, you talked about having a series of systems and tools. Is that something that you use, you're aware of, or what are your suggestions?
The question is to us, right, Richard?
I think, well, it's specifically about, are there tools that help institutions to, I guess maybe it's helping around, ensuring that you have the right controls around the policy. I don't know if there's, obviously that's a tricky area, because I know, that's probably more around the, the actual compliance management within the AML CFT control framework.
I think there are tools that we use for parts of this, but AML policy is a very huge framework from governance to monitoring. Therefore, end to end, I'm not aware of any kind of tool.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Yeah. It's very complex, and it's an area where there's a lot of putting things together, and it's very manual. So I'm sure if there is one out there, there's a huge opportunity that can automate that. Right, so thank you very much, both of you. Actually, before we go on, perhaps just a little bit about the Compliance Association and the role you see of that in putting together the right people, the skills, mindset, etc.
Yeah. We established the association just like a year ago during the pandemic. And the idea was to create a reference point for people who want to discuss and develop on compliance area, to a platform where we could get the compliance experts, the regulators, the third-party vendors in a platform and learn from each other, come up with best practices, and even maybe webinars around compliance area. So we review the new draft regulations and provide our opinions on it. I think it's going to be a center, or the aim is to create a center where you can knock on the door, to answer your questions, to get up to date with the hot topics, and even extract new skills, again, new joiners to the sector in order to make sure we have this diversified skill set and we have compliance officers raising.
Great, fantastic. So, and I'm sure your people can reach out to you if they're interested, right? In joining that. Fantastic. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for this part of it, and you'll join us at the end. So we're going to now go to our third session, which is on the transformation. I'm going to ask Onur, Paul, and Russ to come on stage with us. And Onur, who's a partner in digital and technology consulting leader at EY, is going to kick us off with an overview of the fintech sector, which is by definition digitally native, and how they are tackling AML CFT controls in the context of the different, market drivers we see within the fintech sector. So please take it away, Onur.
Richard, hi. I think we are having a technical difficulty with Onur. So if we could just continue with either Paul or Russ, I think, while we wait for Onur.
Right. No problem at all. Okay, well, maybe I'll turn to Paul then from Refinitiv. So, Paul, I mean, maybe you can pick up on some of the points that we heard from Tolunay and Ozge on that transformation journey, and particularly Ozge's point about the fundamental starting point of data and how how you think that's important depending on what type of organization you are.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Just to do a quick introduction, my name is Paul Iezzi. I'm a solutions consultant from Refinitiv, and what that essentially means is I meet with all of our prospective clients or current clients and discuss with them what their needs are in the third-party risk and compliance space. I've been with Refinitiv for just over 7 years now, and I do come from a consulting background. But in those 7 years with Refinitiv, I've got to have a lot of conversations with those current or prospective clients and try to understand what are their problems that they're trying to solve today. When it comes to both digitizing and automating their KYC processes. So, my role is really to, understand what they're looking for in the market, try to identify if there's Refinitiv products or solutions or data that are going to best meet their needs. And if not, are there partner solutions where we can bring them into the story or the picture to address those needs as well. So, I'd like to think that I've got a lot of exposure or experience to those different types of clients, all the way up from, tier one banks down to small and medium-sized businesses on what their problems are and how they're actually going about trying to solve those problems. Going back to the point that we were just discussing, starting at data, I think fintechs have an advantage where they have that digital first approach where, you're starting off with a digital process and not really relying on manual processes so much. And when you have a digital process as a starting point, that's when you can start to realize a lot of those efficiencies. And even clients that aren't starting off with just a digital first approach, some of the things to consider are, when we are digitizing the process or digitizing portions of the process, how do we bring things together, or how do we build in feedback loops to make sure that the entire client lifecycle is coming together in an effective way? So a lot of clients will start off with, maybe a great data collection process, but if that's not feeding through into how you're doing screening or risk scoring or ongoing due diligence for that client, then you've got a broken process. So, data is a great point to start in terms of getting good quality verified data about your clients and, making sure that that fits in with the entire, framework or life cycle and having things communicate to have a holistic approach to KYC and onboarding.
Great. That's excellent. More detail on the points that we heard before, and I guess Russ, turning to you, and as we've said, I think a number of speakers have said in this discussion, the kind of foundational starting point is that in that journey of collecting data is the ID and verification part of the AML controls. And so maybe, Russ, you could just give us your perspective on what you see as the most effective and efficient digitally optimized ID verification process, and how that feeds into that data journey and the ability to manage customers through their life cycle within an institution.
Sure, thanks, Richard. Again, introduction from me. I'm Russ Cohn. I'm General Manager of International for OCR Labs. OCR, just so for some context, provides a fully automated omni-channel identity verification and fraud detection platform to help businesses of all sizes anywhere in the world to accurately, quickly, and securely verify the identity of their customers. And so for us, we've seen tremendous growth across the world. We started in Australia. I'll give you some more context later. I know I have a presentation, but we started in Australia. We now international headquarters in London in the UK, and we have offices in Istanbul as well as people on the ground. So we see a huge shift. I echo everything Holly said earlier. And some of the speakers on the earlier panel around the trends of COVID and digital and mobile, and how that's shifting the need to be where the consumer is. So I think, we deal with financial institutions and all types of institutions globally, and the pressure to do a process like this in a compliant way, but do it in a way that's also user-friendly, is really where the focus needs to be. So it's really important to understand how to get that user into your journey in a way that is not with much friction. So to reduce the friction point and to ensure they have an experience that allows them to go through that process easily. The benefit for the user, of course, is they feel that they trusted and safe, and our solutions, we do that in a safe and secure way, of course, with all the right compliance and regulations and checks and safety that businesses need to feel secure. But the businesses, at the same time, whether you're a large bank or a digital neobank, you need to ensure that you're improving, for one, your audit trail, and if you have an audit trail that can be verified. You want to reduce human error, which I think is one of the biggest problems with KYC historically in AML. If you look at all the current processes that are used in sectors, in banking, financial services, everything at the moment that's offline, there is a huge amount of human error and potential fraud as well, internally as well as externally. And so you want to eliminate that as far as possible as you can. And while you're doing that, you want to lower your costs at the same time. So redeployment of personnel, of employees into more valued tasks, when you can give more automation to machine learning and to processes using technology as the backboners, as the starting point. So I think there has to be an element of trust in terms of your partners. You have to validate your partners to make sure that they fit the local regulation, that they're compliant, they have all the right checks, the ISOs, etc., to make sure that you have a process you can trust. And once you trust that process and you move away from the traditional way of thinking of like, we need all these people to validate, but actually technology can do the job of many, many people. It's not about eliminating jobs. It's about creating more high value jobs for people who can be put on tasks that are more valuable to the business that's using the technology. So for me, it's an irreversible trend, and I think COVID has accelerated that, is what we've seen from east to west, to be honest. We have customers in many countries across the world. That's irreversible. I've been in technology personally in nearly 25 years, so since kind of Web 1.0, and it's an exciting time for somebody like me to see another acceleration of digital and of mobile, and the fact that we should use this technology in a way that enhances customers' journeys and also makes business sense to do that. So it's a good time. I think decisions just have to be made centrally and supported, and these processes need to be put in place as rapidly as possible in compliance and regulation within the local territory. Great.
Thank you very much, Russ. And Paul, Zeynep, do we have Onur to join us?
Unfortunately, we are trying, but I will give another try. Onur Bey, if you can hear me, I've sent you another invitation. I think we have seen him for a moment, but then there has been a problem and lost him again.
Well, we've got. Okay, well, look, well, hopefully we'll bring Onur into our discussion, but I think will now perhaps be a great time, perhaps if we could bring Tolunay and Ozge back up onto stream, and we'll go to our Q&A panel because we've got some questions in from the audience, which is fantastic. So thank you for your questions. We'll start to go through those, and if you have others, please fire them in as well. So I think one of our questions is, first one is, how do the international financial institutions inquire about the source of the money when accepting customers to them? So obviously that's a process, but it'd be interesting to get our panelists' view on what are the specific new data sets and technologies that can make that more efficient and effective.
It's a question to me, right?
Well, let's start. Well, it's a question about how international financial institutions inquire about the source of money. So we have two of those with us. Thank you.
Yes, luckily today.
Yeah.
Let me start. How we see the customer profile and the relationship as a international financial organization is, Ozge referred to the AML policy. I mean, international companies like HSBC or ING, they have their international and global AML policies, and they would like to, of course, keep almost same standards in all countries they operate. So the source of funds is one of the KYC element. That's pretty important. I mean, definitely. But maybe one thing more than important than the source of fund is the overall customer profile, because it's just a part of it. How you understand the customer, how you understand the background, how you understand the source of wealth before moving to the source of fund are the crucial steps to understand the customer profile. So once you progress with the KYC, then source of fund is just an element of it. If you can build that trust, then you can manage the source of a fund element as well. Having a link with, of course, source of wealth, there must be a consistency between the information provided by the customer. Institutions generally would like to receive the source of fund from another financial institution. Cash is not so preferable, that I may say, but of course there might be some exceptions. So as I said, I mean, maybe there's not a yes or no or a clear-cut answer for this question, but it's a part of all profile.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe Paul, turning to you, because I think this speaks very much to your points around making sure you've got the data, this holistic view of customers, right? So what's your perspective around this approach?
Yeah, and I echo the point that it comes back to what is the actual customer profile that we're looking at here, because everything does fall back to a risk-based approach. Is this something that is logical and it makes sense? Is this a one-off situation, or is this, something that's, repetitive or recurring? And that only comes through when you understand who the client is. And if you've got a good risk-based approach in place, then the actual, source of the funds or source of the wealth, is almost secondary, but it's, it's something that's required and it's there.
Evet,
but
özellikle baktığımızda tabii ki.
Sorry, I'm not sure if that was a
no.
question.
I think somebody's just
sure. But like I said, I guess going back to that risk-based approach, if you've got good processes in place, if you've got a good way to understand and know your customers, if everything is vetted and verified, then you've got that reliance, or not so much reliance, but confidence that, you've done a good job from a regulatory compliance standpoint, and you can move forward with that customer. And more importantly, if these are things that are coming off as, red flags or one-offs or things like that, you've also got that, I called it earlier, feedback loop, but a way to revisit that particular activity from that customer, in a way that you can address it in a meaningful way. And this isn't something that's going to cause a bigger issue down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just going to move on to another question, because I know we'll have other views on that. But there's a question here which I think's kind of important, because it takes us to a kind of like a sort of a kind of meta question, which is, why do we have different technologies and solutions across different kinds of institutions? Shouldn't we, isn't it more efficient and cost effective to have centralized solutions and technologies hosted by local authorities and global authorities, considering, so this will enable to share and analyze transaction data? So in fact, when we do see in other jurisdictions the emergence of things like the transaction monitoring utility in the Netherlands, obviously attempts of KYC utilities, and so I guess the question is, why don't we move towards this approach where there's more of a shared service straight utility approach where we're able to share data? So I guess the question is, A, is that a good thing? And B, why don't we see more of this happening? Does anyone want to?
Yeah, I mean, I can comment on it.
Yeah.
I think, first of all, yes, it's logical, but it's post factum. So everything happens, and then you and you look at it from centralized data and try to make sense out of it, which as FIs we also do post factum controls, but that's not the only thing we do. So I think it has to be complemented with controls that are embedded during the process. And I think intelligence plays a very important part in this. And I think that also can be related to the previous question that we answered. Intelligence, you cannot collect all the intelligence from data, not from the transaction details, but actually whoever faces the client has the best intelligence on the client. So even when you're depositing cash, and how the cash feels and smells is an intelligence that is crucial in combating financial crime and AML. And that is not in the data. Therefore, it has to be a complementary control, not just the only solution.
Yeah, and my comment to that would also be, I think in a lot of situations, it's very good and it's very helpful to have those things. If we're talking about, digital identity verification, it's really helpful to have a centralized, national database that you can quickly and easily verify identities. But that's not going to work 100% of the time. The world's becoming global. People move, people shift, they transition. So it's good to have these sources to cover the majority of cases. But you're always going to have those situations that are very difficult or complicated, where you can't rely on just a single source of truth.
Great. Okay. I'm just conscious of time. Zeynep, we have the company presentations. Should we move to those now, or do we have a little bit longer?
Yes, I think so, because I think we answered all the questions. Thank you very much to our panelists. And apologies to Onur Bey, we couldn't really fix the problem. So we couldn't hear the EY's presentation by Onur Bey. I think now we can continue with Paul and Russ with their presentations. And if I manage to sort things out with EY's presentation, then I will try one more time after their presentations. Thank you very much all. Thank you, Richard.
And thank you all. Thank you very much for everybody in such an excellent and concise session of panel discussions. And thank you to our audience as well for your questions. Excellent. They were indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now I will share my screen. I think, Paul, you are next to go with your presentation.
Sure.
Evet, şimdi sunumla devam edebilirsiniz diye düşünüyorum.
Okay, so I had given a brief introduction of myself just prior.
Evet, şimdi genel hatlarıyla bir bilgi
Refinitiv.
vermek istiyorum. Refinitiv isimli şirket için çalışmaktayım. Ve
sorry, if we could just go back a slide. Okay, great, thanks.
Evet,
So
teşekkürler.
I wanted to introduce
Şimdi sizlere
what does Refinitiv bring to the market, or what is my role
bizim
as a solutions
piyasaya neler
consultant?
sunduğumuzu Refinitiv olarak
When
ve
I'm
benim
speaking
rolümün
with
ne olduğunu
potential
anlatmaya
clients,
çalışacağım. Şimdi potansiyel
we're
müşterilerle
trying to understand
konuştuğumda
what their needs are within the
genel
client
olarak
lifecycle.
onların
I
müşteri
had this
yaşam
title at the
döngüsü
top,
içerisindeki
work smarter,
ihtiyaçlarının
not
neler
harder, and I
olduğunu
think that
anlamaya çalışıyoruz.
echoes
Tabii
a
daha
lot of the
akıllı
things that
çalışmak, daha
were
çok çalışmaktan ziyade en önemli
mentioned or discussed
ihtiyaçlardan
during this
birisi.
panel.
Bunlar zaten bu panel boyunca ele
Within
alınacak
compliance, it's not about
konulardan birisi.
replacing
Ve
humans. It's more
ayrıca
about
tabii ki
aligning humans in the compliance
insanları tabii ki
realm to be more focused on
içerisinde
more
daha
efficiency or
fazla
more value-added
verimlilik
activities.
veya daha da
And how
katma
we can
değer
do that is
getiren
by
faaliyetlere odaklı
providing
hale
services
getirmek
or
ve bunu
data or
yaparken de
automation
veri,
around the
otomasyon
entire
veya
client
hizmet
lifecycle.
sunarken bu müşteri yaşam
So if we
döngüsü
think about the
içerisinde
first part of the client
değeri
lifecycle where
ortaya
you're
koyabilmek ve
collecting or verifying
tabii
data
ki verinin
from either
toplanması
individuals or
ve
corporate entities,
özellikle
Refinitiv has solutions to support
bütün
that
bunlara yönelik
through
olarak
our
çözümleri
entity
sunacak bir kuruluş
verification
olarak
reports or
Refinitiv
our quality and
olarak
digital
biz
onboarding
piyasada bulunuyoruz.
solutions
Tabii ki
that
dijital
help
onboarding
to
çözümleri sunuyoruz ki böylece
automate and quickly
otomasyonu
verify
sağlayabilsinler
client
ve
data
hızlıca
to streamline that initial part of
müşteri
the
verisini
process.
süreci
Then
başlatacak
if we look
şekilde
at moving on to actually doing
kullanabilir hale
screening,
gelsinler.
Regtech is a solution
Tabii ki buradaki
provided by Refinitiv, and it's become an industry standard when it comes to AML and CFT checks. So identifying if there's any sanctions, regulatory enforcement, law enforcement, adverse media or negative news. And Regtech is an industry leader with that type of screening solution. And we also have Media Check, which brings the reputational risk or adverse media element into that whole screening element of the client lifecycle. Now you can see along the bottom, we have a technology platform called our client onboarding platform. And this helps to bring everything together if clients don't have a solution like that. So, we kind of had this question asked earlier, is there a resource that does everything when it comes to verifying and validating a compliance policy? And I think the consensus is that there's no one single way to do that. But we have a way for clients to take that approach to utilize the different sources that they might have at their disposal to have a holistic approach to doing client onboarding and managing that client lifecycle. Now, what we also have are solutions around further due diligence reports. So whether it's source of wealth reports or fully robust due diligence reports to better understand your clients, a Refinitiv due diligence service provides that. And this could be useful for scenarios where you've got a potentially high-risk client or a client where it's hard to find information about them, and really frees up the time for your internal team to be more efficient and source that information directly from our service. And then also there's an element of ongoing due diligence. So ongoing monitoring or ongoing screening, that's something that Regtech certainly provides, as well as Media Check. And then also our quality solution for those, refreshes or renewals to re-verify your identity or ID documents from your clients. So at Refinitiv, we think about bringing together data, technology, and the people, because we have research teams that provide those due diligence reports and the profiles that make up Regtech, as well as the other services that we have. So that combination of data, technology, and people helps to automate the process and make the overall client lifecycle management much more efficient for our clients that we work with. And if we could just go to the next slide. Just a quick overview of who Refinitiv is. So we've actually had quite a bit of change over the last couple of years. Refinitiv was originally the finance and risk division of Thomson Reuters. And that was as of only a few years ago, but as of 2018, we became Refinitiv, an independent entity. So we have a market-leading financial data side of our business, and we also have a market-leading third-party compliance and risk side of our business. And we bring that together to meet all of the needs from not just financial services, but also non-financial businesses in how they address risk for their clients. And because of that, we have this global presence. So you can see that we've got a large organization of sales professionals that can sit down with you, discuss what your needs are, and make recommendations and become your trusted partner to find the best solutions that are there and available to you to meet your needs. These are professionals that have been in the industry for a while. They've probably been asked the question that you're asking them multiple times, and they've worked with other clients. And more specifically, that global reach comes from being in the market or in your country or jurisdiction as well, and having that local expertise. So we're very much a global organization spread around the globe, and have that local insight that you can rely on. So that's essentially who Refinitiv is. We are now owned as part of the London Stock Exchange Group. As part of that, it's only increased our breadth in terms of the offerings that we provide, not just from the financial market side of the business, but also in the risk side of the business. So, one example of that is just recently we've launched a financial instruments risk intelligence offering, which allows our buy side and in some cases our sell side clients the ability to identify if there's any type of regulatory or sanctions risk within the securities that you're purchasing. So that's that marrying up of that financial data with the regulatory and compliance data that we have. And once again, we've got teams available in the countries in which you operate to support you. So we look forward, if you do want to get in touch with us to ask questions about the products or services that we mentioned. We definitely have an organization or a team in Turkey. I work closely with that team quite frequently, and definitely reach out, get in touch with us, and we'd be happy to answer any other questions you have about our organization or how we can help you address any of the third-party or compliance needs that you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this presentation. Then we will continue with Russ. But I need to share a video first.
Did you manage to get any sound, Zainab? Great, thanks, Zainab. Good. So if you want to move to slide 3, Zainab.
Okay.
I can't control on this side.
Sorry. Is it here? It's okay.
That's the one. That's the one. Yeah. Great. So thank you. I hopefully you enjoyed that video. Sorry that the sound didn't quite come through, but we can always share it after the event, and you can watch it again. I gave a brief introduction of myself and OCR Labs, but we're very focused on making user verification effortless through the use of technology. We build intelligent tools that protect users from identity fraud while enabling a seamless user experience, which is key for us. Our advanced solutions for the Turkish market will help, we know, to reduce fraud, meet the regulations, offer enhanced security for consumers who share their identities, and adapt particularly to the new trends in the younger generation and the unbanked of mobile-first customers, and hopefully pave the way for companies to profitably acquire and verify the customers through multiple channels. If you move to the next one. Our approach is privacy-first technology with industry-leading precision. So our ID decisions are made by deep learning technology, built and trained by our world-leading team of engineers, mathematicians, and deep learning experts. These processes are repeatable, and the machine is always learning and improving through the training that we give it constantly. Most people buy in their biometrics, but it's the most critical part in our view, and anyone that you work with or propose to work with who says that they actually do this probably doesn't. We've developed ours in-house, and we tested it for nearly 5 years, and we know we're market leading in terms of biometric technology. When we approached the Turkish market, though, we knew there were new regulations in place and ever changing, and we wanted to build something that's locally compliant, clearly. And because we make everything ourselves, we were able to do that in-house from the ground up, particularly around the NFC and the video call capability, which I'll show you in a couple of slides' time. Moving on, Zainab. So Turkey, as we know, with its population, very interested in technology, multiple mobile accounts, and with strong, particularly now, legal regulations and an infrastructure that is very strong in both banking and telco, we feel that this area has potential to drive massive innovation in digital customer onboarding. So our advanced solutions for this market, we know, can help reduce fraud, meet regulations, and offer enhanced security, particularly to consumers who share their identities, and potentially this is new for them. So there's an education process along the way, and they want to feel safe in doing this. And I guess the companies that we work with want to feel safe in doing it as well. So we think this will facilitate better user experiences and definitely new economic opportunities for both corporations and consumers by creating this access for all, particularly jobs, which we think will be created from the need to support this new regulation. And of course, as mentioned earlier by Holly and others, we talked about lowering costs. So, put people, get rid of old, antiquated, expensive processes and use digital identity to potentially reduce the resources, which is what we've seen from customers across the world on that manual identity verification process. And the chances are that you will see less fraud write-offs as well, which is a big problem, particularly for financial institutions and for banks in particular. And where possible, I know not so much in the financial sector, but cloud services, we've seen, particularly in the UK and in markets across the world, US and Australia, this can help to scale rapidly and definitely reduce operating costs. So try and use that where possible. Next slide. The key again, I just want to bring up this reducing human error. So, while we love our people and we hire the best, we know that they can't always reliably detect fraudulent and stolen IDs. And we can do that and verify with very, very high accuracy that the customers who purport to claim who they are really are those people. Human judgment is still needed sometimes, and frontline staff can benefit from the richer information and robust analysis of that customer's identity and can significantly reduce the risk of human errors, which we see time and time again. Again, I think in terms of compliance, particularly for banking, the improvements in the audit trail are essential, and securing the proof of identity digitally can actually provide the full history of the customer, the due diligence, the onboarding process, and any relevant data in a compliant way where a review is needed. And of course, friction points, as I've said and I mentioned earlier, consumers want mobile first, really easy processes. And when people want to sign up to new products or services, particularly banking, traditional ID verification can create friction points and slow them down or even deter them altogether. Our products are in fact omni-channel, so you're able to trigger the digital identity process in store, in a call center, or fully digitally online. So it's offering the consumer the choice while they move from maybe an omni-channel world to something more digital to still feel comfortable doing this process in an environment that is good for them, particularly for people with accessibility issues. Using that process can be really, really helpful. So it's definitely very, very inclusive, and it will reduce it will reduce the customers who might leave you and increase the rate of approved customers, of course. So that's pretty essential. So we encourage you to partner with experts and focus your teams away from those manual processes and getting onto more high-value tasks that can add more value to the bank. I'm going to move fairly quickly, if you just move on, Zainab, through some screenshots. I didn't want to go through a live demo. It can be fairly exhausting, but just starting back one, Zainab, just to show you the first interaction that one of your organization, if you were to partner with us, their call agent would have. And we've built this technology from the ground up. We don't partner with anyone. We own our own roadmap. And we have built this specifically for the Turkish market, so the video calling technology as well as NFC. But in this case, the agent will see that there's somebody in the queue. The user will have taken an image of the front and the back of the ID and confirm the details, which is carried out over an NFC reader of that card. And at that point, they pass to the call agent who will then answer the call. Moving on. And of course, we've redacted and just made this more generic so you can see. But once the call is answered, they presented the agent particularly with a nice clean interface. They give a summary of the breakdown of the user's information. Random questions are then asked about the information that's been provided, and the agent can confirm whether the user provides the correct information. It's important to note here that the agent is already being provided with information from OCR Labs to confirm that the NFC and the MRZ data in fact match. So they know that's happening in the background while the customer is doing this challenge work. So moving on. So using OCR Labs' proprietary facial recognition technology, which we built ourselves, we're providing a three-way match between the user, the card, and the NFC data to ensure that the person who is presenting that identity is in fact the same person that the ID image belongs to, which is critical in this process in an automated way, or of course the way that we do it here through the Turkish process. Just moving on. As you'll see, the next stage is to ensure that the person on the call is in possession of the ID presented at the time the transaction was initiated. So that's pretty critical to have that person present doing this, and it's not a copy or video or somebody else doing it for them. In this case, the user is asked to present the front and back of the card. Of course, in Turkey, you need both of those, while pointing to random features on the card, as well as performing the hologram tilt test. These are all very strong security features in Turkish identity, which are unique and need to be tested for to ensure that that ID is actually valid to the process and the person doing it. Next slide. A summary of the card information is then shown to the agent so that they can make an educated decision about the legitimacy of that card data, which has been provided, including a document fraud analysis from OCR Labs, which they then match up and can decide on what to do. Moving forward, all the symbol elements of the card are then shown to the agent as well. So they're all extracted and broken out so that they can see these key components of what the card is portraying. And then on the last slide, the final data-driven options give a security breakdown of the NFC read. So in this case, a full check of the active and passive security, as well as the data groups that were accessed as part of the read, are shown to the agent. So they really have everything and all the information that they need. And on the last screen, you can see that the agent would then finish the call. Moving forward, Zainab, and all the data, including the images, videos, and PII, are encrypted to be able to be stored for later inspection and auditing. If required, this whole process end-to-end can only take a couple of minutes. So ideally, we do this in other territories in 30 to 60 seconds. Of course, with this elongated process, the need for extra security in the Turkish market, it will take a little bit longer, but we've tried to make it as frictionless and as easy as possible for users. So hopefully that gives you a good indication of us and our products. Just moving forward on the next slide, Zainab. Thank you. To show you a little bit of our credibility, if you move forward. We're trusted by some of the world's biggest brands, including some banks. We have global relationships with HSBC and ING out in Australia. And of course, we're working with OYAK and Orphan in the Turkish market and are due to go live with the regulation changes at the end of the year, but we provisioned and are ready for these customers. So we are very excited about the Turkish market. And if you go to the next slide, Zainab, please feel free for anyone to get, I'm sorry that's not come out so well, but it's hello@ocrlabs.com. Please feel free to reach out. We'd love to talk about our solution and how it fits in the Turkish market. and are very excited about the opportunities that this brings for us, and can't wait to build our team out and work with more Turkish customers. Thanks for your time.
For this presentation, and actually this is the end of our session today. Many thanks to all of our speakers, moderator, translator, and colleagues at the IT who made it possible today. My sincere apologies to Onur Doğan from the UI team and from the audience, of course, to the audience because of that technical issues and difficulties. But I think this has been a good session overall, and I hope that you think the same way, so that this has been an insightful session for you. Hope to see you all again tomorrow at the main conference. By the way, please use the individual link for this event to reach us and contact the speakers function by the Prufix TV platform. So if you just click on the link, you will see this contact the speakers button, and you can use that button to contact us and the speakers. Thank you very much, and have a good day.